Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive alien ship through the view screen of the Terra Nova. The vessel was unlike anything humanity had ever imagined. It stretched for miles in every direction, its dark metal hull covered in strange symbols that seemed to glow with their own inner light. After 3 years of faster-than-light travel, this was humanity's first encounter with intelligent alien life, and Jake felt the weight of history pressing down on his shoulders. The Terra Nova had been humanity's pride and joy when it launched, from Earth orbit in 2384. Built with the revolutionary quantum slip drive that allowed travel between star systems, it represented everything humans had achieved in their long climb from the caves to the stars. The ship carried a crew of 200 scientists, diplomats, and explorers, all chosen for this historic mission to make contact with whatever civilizations might exist beyond Earth's solar system. Dr. Lisa Chen stood beside Jake on the bridge, her hands trembling slightly as she reviewed the data streaming across her tablet. As the ship's lead xenobiologist, she had spent years preparing for this moment, but nothing could have prepared her for the reality of it. The alien ship was broadcasting on multiple frequencies, and their translation computers were working overtime to decode the messages. "Captain, we're receiving a transmission," reported Communications Officer Danny Walsh from his station. "The computer says it's in what appears to be a trade language, probably used for first contact situations." Jake nodded, trying to keep his voice steady. "Put it through." The view screen shifted, and suddenly they were looking at something that would haunt human nightmares for generations to come. The alien standing before them was tall and reptilian, with scales that shifted color like oil on water. Its eyes were large and dark, showing an intelligence that was both familiar and utterly foreign. When it spoke, the words came through the universal translator in a voice that sounded like grinding stone. "Greetings, young species. I am Admiral Zethkar of the Galactic Confederation. Your presence in this system has been noted and recorded. You will accompany us to Confederation space for evaluation." Lisa stepped forward, her scientific training overriding her fear. "This is Dr. Lisa Chen of the human vessel Terra Nova. We come in peace, seeking knowledge and friendship with other intelligent species. We mean no harm to anyone." The alien's expression didn't change, but something in its posture suggested amusement. "Peace is not a concept that determines survival. In this galaxy, human, you will follow our ship to the Proxima Station. There you will learn what is required of your species if you wish to continue existing." Jake felt his blood run cold. "Required? What do you mean?" "All species must prove their worth through strength, or they are eliminated as potential threats to galactic stability. This has been the way for over 10,000 of your years. You have been given the gift of knowledge that we exist. Now, you must prove you deserve to share the galaxy with us." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the bridge of the Terra Nova in stunned silence. Jake looked around at his crew, seeing his own shock and fear reflected in their faces. They had come to the stars hoping to find wisdom and wonder. Instead, they had found something that threatened the very existence of humanity. "Captain," whispered Navigation Officer Pete Summers, "their ship is moving. They're setting course for the Proxima system." Jake made the hardest decision of his life. "Follow them. We need to know what we're dealing with." The journey to Proxima Station took 3 days, during which the crew of the Terra Nova worked frantically to learn everything they could about their captors. The Confederation ship was massive beyond human understanding, powered by energy sources that registered on their sensors but made no sense to human science. Dr. Chen and her team worked around the clock, analyzing every scrap of data they could. "Gather. Captain, you need to see this," Lisa said, her face pale with exhaustion and fear. "I've been studying their ship's energy signatures. The power output is incredible. That single vessel could glass every city on Earth without breaking." "Stride!" Jake studied the data, trying to comprehend numbers that seemed impossible. "How many species has the Confederation encountered?" based on what I can determine from their databases, which they're not exactly hiding from us, over 10,000. Most submitted immediately when they learned about Confederation power. Others tried to fight and were destroyed completely. A few managed to prove themselves worthy and became member species. What does it take to prove worthiness? Lisa's hands shook as she pulled up another display. Military strength. Each species must defeat a Confederation test fleet in battle. The test fleet consists of 50 Dreadnought-class warships, each one more powerful than anything humanity has ever built. Proxima Station appeared on their screens like a small moon made of metal and crystal. Ships from dozens of different species docked at its massive ports, and Jake realized he was looking at a gathering of civilizations that spanned the galaxy. The Terra Nova was guided to a docking bay that seemed designed for smaller vessels, like their own. Admiral Zethkar met them at the airlock, accompanied by two other aliens that Jake didn't recognize. One appeared to be covered in what looked like living metal, while the other seemed to be made of crystalline structures that refracted light in impossible ways. Welcome to Proxima Station, humans. Here you will learn the true nature of galactic civilization, Zethkar said, his scaled face showing what might have been satisfaction. Your species has exactly one standard galactic year to prepare for the trial of strength. You must build a fleet capable of defeating our test armada, or your homeworld and all human colonies will be sterilized. Jake felt the words hit him like physical blows. You're talking about genocide, the murder of billions of innocent people. We are talking about the natural order of the galaxy, Zethkar replied calmly. Strong species survive and contribute to galactic civilization. Weak species become extinct and make room for those more deserving. This is how it has always been. Dr. Chen stepped forward, her scientific mind still working despite the horror of their situation. What if we choose not to participate? What if we simply return to our own space and leave you alone? The alien that appeared to be made of metal spoke for the first time, its voice like the ringing of bells. Isolation is not permitted. Knowledge of our existence makes your species either an asset or a threat. There is no middle ground. You have 1 year, Zethkar continued. Use it wisely. We will provide you with basic specifications for our test ships so you understand what you must defeat. We are not unreasonable. Every species receives the same opportunity. As they were escorted through the station, Jake saw representatives from dozens of different worlds. Some appeared confident and proud. Others seemed broken by whatever trials they had faced. He realized that what they were seeing was the result of 10 millennia of this brutal selection process. The data package they received about the Confederation test fleet made Jake's heart sink. 50 ships, each one larger than Earth's biggest space stations, energy weapons that could crack planets, shields that could deflect anything humanity could throw at them, and armor made from materials that didn't exist in human space. As the Terra Nova prepared to depart for Earth, Jake stood on the bridge one last time, looking at the alien station that had just pronounced a death sentence on his entire species. But as he watched his crew work with grim determination, he felt something stirring in his chest. It wasn't hope, not yet. But it was something humans had carried with them from the caves to the stars. It was the refusal to give up, no matter how impossible the odds. The emergency session of the United Earth Council lasted 18 hours straight. Representatives from every nation on Earth sat in stunned silence as Captain Jake Morrison delivered his report from the giant screens that surrounded the assembly hall. The data from Proxima Station painted a picture so grim that many delegates simply refused to believe it. Admiral Kate Rodriguez stood at the center of the room, her uniform crisp despite the fact that she had not slept since the Terra Nova's message arrived 3 days earlier. As the highest-ranking military officer in the unified Earth forces, the impossible task of defending humanity had fallen on her shoulders. The numbers she had been studying made her stomach turn. Ladies and gentlemen, let me be absolutely clear. About our situation, Kate said, her voice carrying to every corner of the silent chamber. The Confederation test fleet consists of 50 Dreadnought-class warships. Each one is approximately 4 kilometers long and mounts energy weapons that could destroy our largest cities in minutes. Their shields can deflect nuclear weapons without even flickering. Dr. Alex Turner shifted nervously in his seat among the scientific advisors. As Earth's leading expert on theoretical physics, he had been tasked with finding some way to match Confederation technology. The preliminary analysis of the data Jake had brought back made him want to weep with frustration. The energy requirements alone are staggering. Alex continued Kate's briefing. A single Confederation ship produces more power than our entire global energy grid. They use something called exotic matter reactors that create energy from vacuum fluctuations. We don't even have theoretical frameworks for how that might work. Council President Maria Santos leaned forward in her chair, her face drawn with exhaustion and worry. Dr. Turner, in your professional opinion, how long would it take us to develop weapons and ships capable of matching this threat? Alex looked down at his notes, then back up at the assembled leaders of humanity. Assuming we could even figure out the basic principles, which is far from certain, I estimate it would take us between 50 and 100 years to develop comparable technology. We have 11 months. The chamber erupted into worried murmurs and heated discussions. Some delegates called for immediate surrender, arguing that preserving some human colonies was better than total extinction. Others demanded that Earth's entire industrial capacity be converted to weapons production, even though everyone knew it would not be enough. Meanwhile, aboard the Terra Nova as it raced back toward Earth, Captain Morrison found himself facing a different kind of challenge. The alien monitoring devices that Admiral Zethkar had installed on his ship were recording everything, and he knew that every word spoken might determine humanity's fate. Dr. Lisa Chen had barely left the ship's laboratory since they departed, Proxima Station. She had been studying the small samples of Confederation technology that the aliens had provided, trying to find any weakness or advantage that might help Earth prepare for the coming test. "Jake, you need to see this," Lisa called out as Morrison entered the lab. She was hunched over a microscope, her eyes red with fatigue. "I've been analyzing the metal samples from their ship hulls. The atomic structure is unlike anything we've ever seen." Morrison looked at the display screen that showed the microscopic structure of the alien metal. "What am I looking at? This material doesn't just absorb energy. It actually converts different types of energy into structural strength. The more you hit it with weapons, the stronger it becomes. It's like their entire fleet is designed to be invulnerable to conventional attacks. Back on Earth, the massive wheels of human industry were already beginning to turn. Colonel Ben Parker had been placed in charge of military production, and he was pushing every factory and shipyard on the planet to their absolute limits. The sight of construction projects springing up across every continent would have been inspiring under different circumstances. "We're converting the Luna shipyards to military production," Ben reported to Admiral Rodriguez during their daily briefing. "The Mars colonies are retooling their mining operations to provide raw materials. Every space construction facility in the solar system is now working on the defense project." Kate studied the production schedules and felt a familiar knot of despair in her stomach. "How many ships can we build in 11 months? "If we push everything to the breaking point and strip resources from every other project, maybe 200 vessels. They'll be armed with our most powerful nuclear weapons and the best armor we can manufacture. Against 50 ships that can each destroy planets?" Ben's face was grim. "Admiral, I've run the simulations 1,000 times. Even if every shot we fire hits its target and every nuclear warhead detonates perfectly, we might be able to damage 5 or 6 of their ships before they wipe us out completely." Dr. Alex Turner was having similar problems with his research team. The quantum laboratories beneath Geneva were working around the clock, but every breakthrough seemed to reveal just how far behind human science really was. The principles that Powered Confederation technology were so advanced that human scientists could barely comprehend them, let alone duplicate them. "We're like cavemen trying to build a nuclear reactor," Alex told his exhausted team during their morning briefing. "We can see that it works. We can measure some of its effects, but the underlying science might as well be magic." His assistant, Dr. Kelly Brooks, looked up from her computer terminal with bloodshot eyes. "Alex, I've been thinking about this. All wrong. Maybe we don't need to match their technology. Maybe we need to find a completely different approach." "What do you mean?" "Every species the Confederation has tested has tried to build bigger ships and more powerful weapons. But what if that's exactly the wrong strategy? What if we approach this like humans instead of trying to copy aliens?" Back on the Terra Nova, Captain Morrison was having similar thoughts as he studied the reports from the various species that had faced the Confederation test. Every successful species had eventually built fleets that could match Confederation firepower through superior numbers or equivalent technology. Every failed species had tried to fight the alien ships on their own terms. "Lisa, what do we know about how the Confederation actually fights?" Morrison asked during one of their strategy sessions. Dr. Chen pulled up tactical data from the Confederation databases. "From what I can tell, they use very formal battle tactics. Ships form up in standard formations and exchange fire at long range until one side is destroyed. It's almost ritualistic. Like medieval knights following rules of chivalry?" "Exactly. There are protocols and procedures for everything. The Confederation has been fighting the same way for thousands of years because it always works." Morrison stared out at the stars streaming past the Terra Nova's viewports. Somewhere out there, 50 alien warships were preparing to destroy everything he had ever known and loved. But as he thought about human history, about every impossible victory his species had ever achieved, an idea began to form in his mind. "Lisa, what if we don't fight their ships at all? What if we fight them?" While the great shipyards of Earth rang with the sound of construction and the laboratories buzzed with desperate research, a different kind of preparation was taking place in the minds of humanity's best military strategists. They were beginning to realize that defeating the Confederation fleet would require more than bigger guns and thicker armor. It would require them to fight like humans instead of trying to fight like aliens, and for the first time since the Terra Nova's return, some people were beginning to believe that humanity might actually have a chance. 6 months had passed since the Terra Nova returned to Earth, and the transformation of human civilization was unlike anything in recorded history. Every major city on the planet now had construction sites that worked 24 hours a day, building ships that looked nothing like the sleek vessels humanity had dreamed of when they first reached for the stars. Chief Engineer Maya Santos stood in the main assembly bay of the Ceres station, watching as teams of workers installed the final components into what had once been a simple cargo hauler. The ship before her bore little resemblance to its original design. Where cargo bays had once held grain and manufactured goods, now massive rail guns extended like the spines of some prehistoric beast. "Maya, the asteroid launcher is ready for testing," called out Tony Martinez from across the bay. He was covered in grease and metal shavings, but his eyes shone with the excitement of someone who was building something that had never existed before. The asteroid launcher was Maya's own design, born from a moment of inspiration during one of the countless strategy meetings that had consumed the past months. If human weapons could not penetrate Confederation shields, then perhaps the answer was not to build better weapons, but to throw bigger rocks. Dr. Alex Turner had finally abandoned his attempts to reverse engineer alien technology and instead focused on pushing human science to its absolute limits. His breakthrough had come not from studying Confederation power sources, but from finding ways to make human technology work far beyond its intended specifications. "We cannot match their energy output, but we can exceed their expectations," Alex explained to the gathered scientists and engineers. "Every Confederation tactical analysis assumes their enemies will fight using energy weapons and deflector shields. They have never faced an opponent who uses kinetic bombardment as a primary weapon system. The conversion of Earth's civilian fleet had been the most controversial decision in human history. President Maria Santos had faced riots and protests when she announced that every cargo ship, mining vessel, and colony transport would be seized and converted for the defense fleet. Families had wept as their life savings were transformed into weapons of war. But Captain Jake Morrison, now serving as the overall fleet coordinator, understood why it was necessary. The Confederation was expecting humanity to build a traditional military fleet, and they were prepared to defeat exactly that kind of force. What they were not prepared for was a swarm of converted civilian ships using tactics that no military academy in the galaxy had ever taught. The beauty of our approach is that we are not trying to build better warships, Jake explained to his senior staff during their daily briefing. We are building something that the Confederation has never seen before. They will scan our fleet and see cargo haulers and mining ships. They will not understand what they are really facing until it is too late. Commander Lisa Hayes had been placed in charge of training the civilian volunteers who would crew these converted ships. The process was unlike any military training program ever developed, because the crews were not learning to be soldiers. They were learning to be something far more dangerous. Remember, you are not fighting a traditional space battle, Lisa told the assembled volunteers in the main training facility on Luna. You are asteroid miners who happen to be carrying weapons. You are cargo haulers who happen to be loaded with explosives. The Confederation expects military precision and formal tactics. Give them chaos and creativity instead. The volunteers came from every walk of life. Former miners who understood how to move massive objects through space. Cargo pilots who could navigate asteroid fields while carrying dangerous loads. Colony ship crews who had experience keeping hundreds of people alive in the vacuum of space. Each group brought skills that no traditional military had ever valued. Dr. Lisa Chen had spent months analyzing Confederation battle tactics from the historical data they had been provided. What she discovered gave her both hope and terror in equal measure. They fight like a machine, she reported to the command staff. Every battle follows the same pattern. Ships form up in standard formations, close to optimal weapons range, and exchange fire until one side is destroyed. There is no improvisation, no adaptation to unexpected circumstances. That sounds like an advantage for us, Jake replied. It is, but it also means they have never needed to develop countermeasures for unconventional tactics. When they realize what we are doing, they may adapt faster than we expect. The asteroid belt had become humanity's primary source of ammunition. Mining ships that had spent decades extracting precious metals now focused on collecting rocks of specific sizes and compositions. The physics were simple enough that even non-scientists could understand them. A 1-ton asteroid moving at a significant fraction of light speed carried more destructive energy than any weapon humanity had ever built. Maya Santos supervised the installation of mass drivers on over 100 converted mining ships. Each vessel could accelerate asteroids to tremendous speeds and launch them with pinpoint accuracy across vast distances. The weapons were crude by Confederation standards, but they were also completely unexpected. The monitoring station reports are fascinating, Dr. Chen shared during one of their meetings. The Confederation observers are filing reports that describe our preparations as primitive and ineffective. They see us mounting industrial equipment on civilian ships and assume we are desperately trying to create weapons from whatever we have available. Which is exactly what we are doing, Jake pointed out. Yes, but they interpret this as weakness rather than creativity. Their tactical assessments predict that our fleet will be destroyed within the first few minutes of combat. Most radical modification was being performed on the colony ships. These massive vessels, designed to carry thousands of people and their equipment to new worlds, were being converted into something that no military strategist had ever imagined. Instead of colonists, they now carried autonomous defense platforms that could be deployed in space to create instant minefields. Captain Steve Collins supervised the conversion of his own ship, the New Horizon, from a luxury passenger liner into what his crew had started calling a drone carrier. The passenger decks now housed thousands of small, cheap robots that could swarm enemy vessels and overwhelm their point defense systems. The drones are not sophisticated enough to penetrate Confederation armor, Steve explained to visiting officials. But they do not need to be. Their job is to distract the enemy targeting systems and create openings for the kinetic weapons. As the months passed, the Confederation monitoring station continued to file reports that grew increasingly dismissive of human preparations. Admiral Zethkar himself reviewed the tactical assessments and concluded that humanity was building exactly the kind of desperate, inadequate defense that he had seen from dozens of species over the centuries. They are converting civilian vessels because they lack the industrial capacity to build proper warships, he reported to the Confederation Council. Their weapons are primitive kinetic projectiles that our shields will deflect easily. This species will provide our test fleet with a brief but satisfying demonstration of Confederation superiority. But there were details in the reports that a more careful observer might have found troubling. Human ships were not forming up in standard battle formations during their training exercises. Instead, they moved in seemingly random patterns that made no sense according to established military doctrine. Their weapons tests showed an emphasis on coordinated fire from multiple ships rather than individual vessel firepower. Most concerning of all, the humans seemed to be treating their ships as expendable resources rather than valuable assets to be preserved. Training exercises regularly involved vessels deliberately ramming targets or positioning themselves in ways that would normally be considered suicidal. Dr. Alex Turner had finally solved the last major technical challenge facing the human fleet. His team had developed a way to link all of the converted ships through a quantum communication network that would allow instant coordination across vast distances. The system was crude compared to Confederation technology, but it would allow the human fleet to act as a single organism rather than individual ships. "We will not defeat them through superior firepower," Alex explained to the final strategy meeting before the fleet's departure. "We will defeat them by being something they cannot understand or predict. They expect a military force following established tactical doctrine. Instead, they will face a swarm of angry humans who refuse to follow any rules except survival." As the deadline approached and the human fleet prepared for its journey to the testing ground, Captain Morrison stood on the observation deck of Earth's primary space station and watched 200 converted civilian ships forming up for departure. They looked like exactly what they were, a desperate collection of improvised weapons built by a species that refused to accept extinction. But Morrison knew something that the Confederation observers did not understand. These ships carried more than weapons and armor. They carried the collective fury of an entire species that had been told it was not worthy to exist. And fury, Morrison had learned from studying human history, was often more powerful than any technology. The Confederation test fleet emerged from hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system exactly 1 year after their first contact with humanity. Admiral Zethkar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and surveyed the primitive, human homeworld through his tactical displays. The sight filled him with the familiar satisfaction of another successful test about to begin. "Admiral, we are detecting the human fleet," reported his tactical officer, a crystalline being whose voice chimed like distant bells. 200 vessels arranged in what appears to be a defensive formation near the asteroid belt. Zethkar examined the tactical readouts with growing amusement. The human ships were spread across millions of kilometers of space in what seemed like a chaotic pattern with no strategic purpose. Their vessels appeared to be exactly what his intelligence reports had predicted: converted civilian craft mounting primitive weapons that posed no serious threat to Confederation technology. "Begin the standard approach," Zethkar commanded. "Form battle line formation and advance to optimal firing range. This engagement should be concluded within 1 standard hour." The 50 Confederation dreadnoughts moved into their traditional formation. a perfect line of massive ships that had dominated space battles for millennia. Each vessel was a masterpiece of military engineering, mounting energy weapons that could crack moons and shields that had never been penetrated by any known technology. Captain Jake Morrison watched the alien fleet approach from the bridge of the Earth's Hope, his converted colony ship that now served as the flagship of humanity's desperate defense. The Confederation ships were even more intimidating in person than the tactical displays had suggested, but Jake felt no fear. He felt only the cold determination of a man who had nothing left to lose. "All ships, this is Morrison," he broadcast, across the quantum communication network that linked the human fleet. "Remember your training. We are not here to fight a space battle. We are here to survive, and we will use every tool at our disposal to make that happen." The first phase of the battle began when the human mining ships opened fire from extreme range. Massive railguns that had been designed to move asteroids through space now hurled chunks of rock and metal at velocities that approached a significant fraction of light speed. The projectiles crossed the vast distance between the fleets in minutes, streaking toward the Confederation formation like meteors. Admiral Zethkar watched the primitive kinetic weapons approach his fleet with complete confidence. Confederation shields had been designed to deflect energy weapons far more powerful than anything these humans could produce. The asteroid fragments would simply bounce off his ship's defenses like raindrops hitting armor plating. But as the first wave of projectiles struck the Confederation shields, something unexpected happened. The rocks did not bounce off or disintegrate as predicted. Instead, they transferred their tremendous kinetic energy directly into the shield generators, causing power fluctuations that rippled through the alien ship's defensive systems. "Admiral, the kinetic impacts are causing resonance feedback in our shield matrices," reported the tactical officer, his crystalline form flickering with concern. "The energy transfer is not following our predicted models." Zethkar frowned as he studied the readouts. The human weapons were not penetrating his shields, but they were forcing his ships to divert more power to defensive systems than anticipated. It was an annoyance rather than a threat, but it was not what his tactical computers had predicted would happen. The second wave of human attacks came from an unexpected direction. Captain Steve Collins led a squadron of converted cargo haulers in a flanking maneuver that brought them around the side of the Confederation formation. His ships released clouds of autonomous drones that swarmed toward the alien vessels like angry insects. "Point defense systems are engaging the drone swarms," reported the tactical officer. "But there are thousands of individual targets. Our targeting computers are having difficulty prioritizing threats." The drones were individually worthless, cheap machines that could barely fly in a straight line. But there were so many of them that the Confederation point defense systems, designed to engage a small number of sophisticated missiles, were overwhelmed by the sheer volume of targets. For every drone that was destroyed, 10 more continued their approach. Maya Santos coordinated the third phase of the attack from her position aboard a converted mining platform. As the Confederation ships focused their attention on the drone swarms, her asteroid launchers began a coordinated bombardment that targeted specific points on the alien formation. "Fire pattern Delta 7, she commanded. "Focus all projectiles on the lead ship's shield generators." Hundreds of asteroids converged on a single Confederation dreadnought from multiple angles simultaneously. The alien ship's shields flared with brilliant light as they absorbed the kinetic impacts, but the sustained bombardment began to cause serious power drain issues throughout the vessel's defensive systems. Admiral Zethkar realized that something was going seriously wrong with what should have been a routine demonstration of Confederation superiority. His fleet was not taking significant damage, but the human tactics were forcing his ships to expend energy and ammunition at rates far higher than any battle in recorded history. These primitives are not fighting according to any recognized tactical doctrine, he reported to his bridge crew. They appear to be treating their own vessels as expendable ammunition rather than assets to be preserved. Captain Collins proved Zethkar's assessment correct. when he deliberately rammed his cargo hauler into the shield generator of a Confederation dreadnought. The human ship disintegrated on impact, but the collision overloaded the alien vessel's defensive systems and created a brief opening in its shields. In that moment of vulnerability, a concentrated barrage of kinetic projectiles penetrated the dreadnought's armor and caused the first serious damage to a Confederation ship in the entire battle. Secondary explosions rippled through the alien vessel's hull as human weapons found their mark. "Admiral, the humans are using their ships as guided missiles," reported the tactical officer with something approaching panic in his crystalline voice. "This is not standard military procedure for any known species." Jake Morrison watched Collins's sacrifice with grim satisfaction. The loss of human life was tragic, but it had proved that Confederation ships could be damaged by human weapons if the right tactics were used. He opened communications to his remaining fleet. "All ships, you saw what Steve accomplished. We can hurt them, but only if we are willing to pay the price. Remember what we are fighting for." The battle entered its most chaotic phase as human. Ships began attacking from every direction simultaneously. Mining vessels hurled asteroids while cargo haulers released drone swarms, and colony ships deployed autonomous weapon platforms throughout the combat zone. The neat, orderly battle line that the Confederation had maintained for thousands of years dissolved into a swirling melee unlike anything in galactic military history. Dr. Lisa Chen coordinated the information warfare aspects of the battle from her position aboard a converted research vessel. Her team had spent months studying Confederation communication protocols, and now they unleashed a coordinated electronic attack that jammed alien sensors and disrupted their tactical coordination. Their command network is designed for formal battle scenarios, she explained to Morrison over the communication link. They cannot adapt to the level of chaos we are creating. Their ships are starting to interfere with each other's targeting systems. Admiral Zethkar found himself facing a tactical situation that no Confederation officer had ever encountered. His ships were individually superior to anything the humans possessed, but the enemy was fighting in ways that made traditional tactics useless. Human vessels appeared and disappeared throughout the battle zone, striking from unexpected angles, and then vanishing back into the asteroid field. "Admiral, we have lost 3 ships to ramming attacks and coordinated kinetic bombardment," reported his tactical officer. "The humans are accepting casualty rates that would be considered suicidal by any rational species." Zethkar studied the EB tactical displays and realized that his perfect test fleet was being defeated by an enemy that refused to follow the rules of civilized warfare. The humans were not trying to win a space battle. They were trying to survive extinction, and that desperation was making them far more dangerous than their primitive technology should have allowed. For the first time in 10,000 years of Confederation testing, Admiral Zethkar began to consider the possibility that his fleet might actually lose. The battle reached its turning point when Admiral Zethkar realized that 15 of his dreadnoughts had been destroyed or disabled by an enemy that should have been eliminated within the first hour of combat. The remaining 35 ships of his test fleet were scattered across the asteroid belt, their perfect formation shattered by human tactics that defied every principle of civilized warfare. "Admiral, we must withdraw," urged his tactical officer as another Confederation ship exploded under concentrated human fire. "This engagement has exceeded all acceptable parameters for a species evaluation test." Zethkar stared at the tactical displays in disbelief. In 10,000 years of testing species across the galaxy, no enemy had ever managed to destroy even a single Confederation vessel. The humans had turned what should have been a simple demonstration of superior firepower into the most devastating military defeat in Confederation history. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Earth's Hope, watching as the surviving human ships continued their relentless assault on the alien fleet. Over half of humanity's vessels had been destroyed in the fighting, but the survivors fought with the desperate fury of a species that refused to accept extinction. "Jake, the Confederation ships are trying to retreat," reported Dr. Lisa Chen from her sensor station. But our mining platforms have been seeding the space around them with automated weapon systems for the past 3 hours. The human strategy had been more complex than simple ramming attacks and kinetic bombardment. While the Confederation focused on the obvious threats, human mining ships had been quietly deploying thousands of small automated platforms throughout the combat zone. These devices were not sophisticated enough to threaten a major warship individually, but collectively, they created a maze of overlapping fields of fire that made retreat extremely difficult. Admiral Zethkar ordered his fleet to break through the human blockade, but every attempt to escape was met by swarms of cheap missiles and kinetic projectiles that forced his ships to remain in the asteroid belt. The humans had turned the entire battlefield into a trap, and his technologically superior vessels were caught like ancient sailing ships in a spider's web. "Admiral, the human commander is requesting communication," reported the tactical officer, Zethkar. Accepted the transmission, curious to hear what this primitive species might have to say now that they had achieved the impossible. The view screen flickered to life, showing the interior of what was obviously a converted civilian vessel. The human standing before him looked tired and battle-worn, but his eyes burned with an intensity that the alien found disturbing. "I am Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Fleet," the human said, his voice calm despite the chaos of battle continuing around both ships. "I believe we need to talk." "You have achieved something remarkable, human," Zethkar admitted, his scaled features showing a mixture of respect and confusion. "In 10 millennia of testing, no species has ever managed to damage a confederation. Test fleet. But you must understand that this changes nothing. Even if you destroy every ship in my fleet, the Confederation will simply send larger forces to eliminate your species." Jake smiled, and there was something in that expression that made Zethkar's blood run cold. "Admiral, I don't think you understand. What just happened here? We didn't defeat your fleet through superior technology or greater numbers. We defeated you because you expected us to fight like every other species you've encountered." "Explain." "Every species you've tested has tried to build ships and weapons that could match your technology. They all accepted your rules about how space battles should be fought. But humans don't work that way. When we're threatened with extinction, we don't follow rules. We use everything we have, every tool at our disposal, and we accept costs that other species consider unthinkable." Dr. Lisa Chen had been monitoring Confederation communications throughout the battle, and now she interrupted the conversation with urgent news. "Jake, I'm detecting massive energy signatures approaching from outside the solar system. Multiple Confederation fleets are jumping into the system." Admiral Zethkar's expression showed surprise and then growing alarm. "Those are not reinforcements under my command. The Confederation Council must have been monitoring this engagement. They are sending the full battle fleet." Jake felt his heart sink as the tactical displays showed hundreds of Confederation ships entering Earth's solar system. The human fleet had achieved a miracle by defeating the test armada, but they could never hope to stand against the entire military might of galactic civilization. But then something unprecedented happened. The approaching Confederation ships did not move into attack formation. Instead, they took up positions around the battlefield and simply waited. After several tense minutes, a new communication came through on emergency channels. The being that appeared on the view screen was unlike anything Jake had ever seen. It seemed to be made of pure energy contained within a crystalline shell, and when it spoke, the words carried overtones that suggested vast age and wisdom. "I am High Counselor Velenth of the Galactic Confederation. I have observed this engagement with great interest, and I bring a message that has never been delivered to any species in our long history." Admiral Zethkar straightened in his command chair, clearly recognizing the authority of the speaker. "High Counselor, the humans have violated every protocol of civilized warfare. Their tactics are barbaric and unacceptable by galactic standards." "Indeed they are," Velenth agreed. which is precisely why they are so valuable. Admiral, in 10,000 years of testing species, we have created a galaxy filled with civilizations that all think and fight in exactly the same way. We have bred conformity and eliminated diversity in the name of order and stability. Jake listened in amazement as the alien continued. The humans have reminded us of something we had forgotten. True strength does not come from following established patterns. It comes from the ability to adapt, to innovate, and to fight for survival using whatever tools are available. High Counselor, are you suggesting that we abandon the testing protocols that have maintained galactic peace for millennia? Zethkar asked. I am suggesting that we have learned something valuable from these humans. They have shown us that there are forms of strength that cannot be measured by energy output or shield capacity. Their willingness to sacrifice everything for survival, their refusal to accept defeat even when facing impossible odds, these are qualities that we have not seen in the galaxy for far too long. Dr. Lisa Chen stepped forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming her exhaustion. High Counselor, what does this mean for humanity? Valenth's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been amusement. Dr. Chen, your species has passed a test that we did not even know we were administering. You have proven that diversity of thought and tactics is more valuable than technological superiority. The Confederation hereby offers humanity full membership as equals, not subjects. The aftermath of the battle saw unprecedented changes throughout the galaxy. The Confederation testing protocols were abandoned, and new species were welcomed based on their potential contributions rather than their military capabilities. The human approach to problem-solving became a subject of intense study throughout galactic civilization. Captain Morrison found himself attending the first Galactic Council session to include human representatives. Ambassador Dr. Lisa Chen addressed the assembled delegates representing thousands of species from across the galaxy. The Confederation offered us membership because we proved we could fight, she said, her voice carrying to every corner of the vast chamber. But that's not why. We deserve to be here. We deserve to be here because we represent something that the galaxy had almost lost. The understanding that survival is not about having the biggest weapons or the strongest ships. Survival is about the will to keep fighting when everything seems hopeless. It's about using creativity and determination to overcome obstacles that seem impossible. And most importantly, it's about refusing to give up. No matter how many times you're told that you're not strong enough or smart enough or advanced enough to deserve your place in the universe. The final scene of humanity's entry into Galactic civilization showed Earth's warships being converted back to their original civilian purposes. The cargo haulers returned to moving goods between worlds, the mining ships went back to extracting resources from asteroids, and the colony vessels resumed their mission of carrying human families to new homes among the stars. But now they carried something additional. The knowledge that when threatened with extinction, any tool could become a weapon, any ship could become a fortress, and any human could become a guardian of their species' future. The galaxy had learned that humans never needed a Warfleet because they possessed something far more powerful. The absolute refusal to accept defeat, no matter what the odds,